Welcome to the Brigham Young University Family History Library webinar series. Feel free to use the chat box for any questions. If we are unable to get to them during the presentation, they will be answered at the end. My name is Maddie Acey. I will be your host for this webinar. Today we will be pleased to hear from James Tanner, who will be giving a presentation titled Adding Memories to the FamilySearch Family Tree. James Tanner has a bachelor's degree in Spanish and a master's degree in linguistics from the University of Utah. He received a Juris Doctor degree in law at Arizona State University. He served for 2 years as an intelligence analyst for the U.S. Army and 39 years as an Arizona trial attorney. He has previously owned a retail computer business and an Apple Macintosh software company. James has over 32 years experience in genealogical research and is an avid blogger of Genealogy Star blog and Rejoice and Be Exceeding Glad. He served for 10 years as a missionary at the Mesa, Arizona Family Search Library and is currently serving at the BYU Family History Library. He has presented at expos and conferences around the U.S. and Canada. James has 7 children and 33 grandchildren.
Howdy, this is James Tanner. We're here with another BYU Family History Library webinar, and these webinars are going to be recorded and they will be going up on the BYU Family History Library YouTube channel. So you can check with that to see the latest in our series of webinars. Today we're going to be talking about adding memories to the FamilySearch Family Tree and go into some of the details of how that occurs and what it is. First of all, understand this concept of memories. When we're adding information to a family, an online family tree, it's often helpful to have attached photographs, documents, letters, journals, whatever material that could be gathered about the ancestors that we have in the family tree. The memory section of the FamilySearch Family Tree is dedicated to those items that can be added on to an individual and associated, and we call that tagging, but tagged to a specific individual or ancestor, relative, whoever, in the FamilySearch.org family tree. First of all, one of the things that's very interesting is to meet your ancestors in the FamilySearch.org memories. It's often surprising. It is possible, of course, that none of your ancestors, none of your relatives have put anything into the FamilySearch.org family tree. But in many cases, people who are acquainted with the program are surprised to find out that their ancestors are there. This is not necessarily a function of people who are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the sponsoring institution for FamilySearch.org. Basically, we have a concept out there that it's a genealogical concept. It's called pedigree collapse. And what pedigree collapse refers to is the fact that as we go back in time, we have a tendency to find out that our own ancestral lines start to decrease rather than increase. When you're talking about ancestors, your ancestors, and particularly your bloodline ancestors, meaning your direct ancestors, they increase geometrically. So you have 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents, 16, 32, 64, etc. So you get back a few generations and you'll have thousands and thousands of potential grandparents. But in reality, that never happens because of what we call pedigree collapse. That means that your ancestors married their cousins, even though they didn't know they were cousins, or they may have been only very distant cousins. Every time an ancestor marries someone who is a cousin, then that line coalesces, it collapses into one line rather than 2 separate lines. So the numbers, if you look at it, there's the classic example of the boa constrictor that's just eaten a big meal. It starts out very small, gets very large, and then goes very small again. That kind of graph is what happens with all family tree diagrams if you were to abstract them out and show all of the direct line connections. So your ancestral lines will will increase almost geometrically for a period of time and then begin to decrease. Now, the decrease can be caused not just by this thing we call pedigree collapse, but it's also caused by the lack of further information. Now, for example, here, we're dealing in memories. We're going to be talking about photographs. Well, photographic process as we know it originated back in the mid 1800s. The earliest photographs that we have are from the 1830s. So if your ancestors, of course, going back in your ancestral line before 1830, there are no photographs. You may very well have a painting or a drawing or something of a family member, but photography did not exist. So it's the same thing with many of these other items that we're attaching. They're relatively new. They're going to be within the last 100 to 200 years that we're going to have what we would call memories. Now, documents are a little bit different. The documents that we're talking about are historical records, and they can go back, of course, as far as any historical records can be created. Now, when I've said that, it's kind of an introduction to the concept of memories in total. And when I say meet your ancestors in the FamilySearch.org family history, it means that as you go in there, you may be overwhelmingly surprised to find a huge number of pictures that you had no idea existed about family members that you may not even be aware of how you're related to them. And so FamilySearch is set up to let you get a larger view, at least back 4 or 5 generations, of the people that you're related to in a very direct way through looking at the photographs that they have uploaded, that your family has uploaded jointly. We often think in terms of FamilySearch Family Tree as being somewhat of a problem due to the fact that everyone has access to the family tree. Every registered user can come in and make changes and add and delete and do everything. Well, one of the most obvious benefits of the tree that counteracts that concept of it being a bother is that we can also benefit from seeing all the photos and documents and diaries and letters and other things that all our relatives have been hoarding away in their basements and their back rooms. If they take the time to digitize those items and put them up online. Okay, so going to FamilySearch.org, in the top of the menu bar, there's a direct link to memories, and then clicking on people may be a revelation to you about the number of relatives that you have that are participating on the FamilySearch.org family tree. Okay, so here we have sort of a scattering of old photographs that help us to understand that. So the new memories gallery, as it is constituted now on FamilySearch.org, contains the following types of items. First of all, of course, are photos. And when we say photos, we mean photographic representations, images that are associated with the individuals in your family tree. The second part of these is stories, and these are text files. That means you type it in, for example, on a word processing program, and then copy and paste that story into the FamilySearch.org Memories Stories section, and then that story is available for anyone who comes to the program and looks at that particular ancestor. They can then read that story. The third one are the documents that we talked about, and we'll talk a little more about, I will talk a little bit more about the difference between what we call a photo and what we're calling a document. On the screen here, we have 2 different kinds of photos. We have a photo of a document, and we have a photo of 2 little children. And then we have a third photo of a place, a location associated with with my ancestors. In this case, these are photos from my ancestral files. So these are some items that may have been interest to the family. The bottom photo there, by the way, this is kind of an aside. It happens to be an old motel in the town of St. John's, Arizona, in eastern Arizona. And that out in front where the little driveway area has been marked off with those big rocks are petrified wood. And if you want an interesting change in the way that the world works, Back then, they used those big blocks of petrified wood as to mark off the driveway, just sitting out there on the ground. Today, each one of those rocks out there would probably sell at a mineral show for upwards of probably $15,000 to $20,000 each. So that whole motel was probably not worth the two or three of those rocks sitting out there on the ground today. So anyway, that's the kind of things that you little insights that are interesting about looking at some of the old photos and the things that you begin to recognize are happening um, out there in the world. The last thing that they've just recently added is audio files, and what we mean by an audio file is a recording of your relatives. So if you have an older relative or even younger relatives that you want to put recording in, you can upload a recording. Now, we're going to have to talk about the difference between living and dead people. With the FamilySearch.org Memories Gallery and the newly designed Memories Gallery, there is a demarcation between dead people and living people, is obvious there, rather than the obvious one. And that is that living people's uh, memories are not necessarily viewable by anyone other than themselves or the person that uploads them. Uh, there are some exceptions, and we'll get to that exceptions in just a minute. But there's an interesting situation here. Okay, now the main reason why we want to do all this is we want to be able to preserve the documents, and then we want to share the documents. This is a picture of my grandparents, Leroy Parkinson Tanner and Eva Margaret Overson Tanner, on their wedding day. This is their wedding photo. Um, the interesting thing about this photo is that until it was shared online, there were two problems. One is these photos were lost for a long period of time. They were found through a long series of circumstances. I've actually talked about that in a different webinar. But the issue here is that there was a danger because there's only one copy of this photo in existence. And that photo, if that photo were lost or destroyed, that would be the end of that image. Now it's preserved by putting it online. We've made a digital copy of the photo. I've made the digital copy of the photo, and then I uploaded it to the memories section. And now anyone who goes to the memories section of this program, basically as long as the program exists, which we expect to be quite a long time, will be able to see the copy of this photo. And in fact, they could copy it, download it to their own computer, and preserve it themselves if they wish to do so. So there's absolutely no restriction on this kind of photo. We do have some copyright. We'll talk about that in a minute, about copyright issues. But so part of this is the sharing part of it is important, but the sharing part of it helps to preserve it. It's not necessarily it doesn't seem to be in your self-interest to share everything, but in this case, sharing is the functional equivalent of preserving it, because the more it's shared, the more likely it is that this particular image will survive over time. Okay, so here's the memories gallery. It's you get there by going to FamilySearch.org. The second menu item at the top is memories, and you'll get this introductory page that'll say introducing the new memories gallery. Well, this is an interesting thing. They seem to have a new whatever every time they do an upgrade or an update to the program, but it doesn't mean that the concept here or anything is new. Is simply they've changed the way the website functions fairly recently, and created what's called a gallery. It's interesting because as time goes on, there's some of the things that were, let's call it less than usual, less than convenient to use about the program, are being changed. They're being updated so that those things that bother you about the program seem to disappear after a time, and the program becomes more useful. Hopefully that doesn't get overloaded with features, because some programs have gone to the point where they become so complicated nobody can use them. Okay, so the memories gallery portion of it shows you all of your documents that you have loaded up. Okay, so if you go to the memories gallery and you look at the gallery portion of it, it will show you what you have uploaded. You personally have uploaded as you've been registered in. It won't show what your mother, your aunt, your cousins, nobody else did. This you. So if you go here and it is blank, that means that's simple. That means you haven't uploaded any photos, documents, stories, or anything to the program. So if there's something there, that shows the work that you've done. Um, when this barely had started, when they started the memories section of Family Search a couple of years ago, I overheard a conversation at a conference, and two of the attendees at the conference were sitting there talking to each other, and one of them said, well, I love the new feature to where you can upload photographs, and I've already uploaded 2,000 photographs. And that was years ago. Well, it's taken me a while, but I have finally got caught up with that one that was 2 years ago and putting up some photographs. But I'll tell you what, it takes some time if you do it correctly and you tag everything. It's not exactly. Now, the interesting thing is that I've hired a couple of my grandkids for the summer to do just that, to add all of this information into the memories gallery. So we'll be cranking out a few more numbers by the end of the summer, hopefully, assuming they ever show up for work. Okay, so there's a plus sign right here in the middle that says, basically it's where you click to add items. So if you click on that green button, the plus sign there, it will turn part of the screen into a space where you can then click on and drag into that space an item that you want to upload. There are some requirements and restrictions on what can be added and uploaded, and we'll talk about that. Okay, the second part of it is this particular icon lets you select all of your submissions. In other words, everything you've uploaded so far will show if you click that icon. Moving over, if you click the next icon, it will show only what you have designated as photos. So if you have differentiated between photos and documents, as you probably should, since that makes some sense, then this will show only your photos. The next one will show your documents. The next one shows the stories you have uploaded. And the last one, little microphone icon, shows your audio files. So you can look at the categories of items that you've uploaded. Now, just to kind of mention here the difference between a photo and a document. And I probably will repeat this once or twice or more than that, perhaps during the course of the webinar here. A document is just that. It's something that gives information about your relative or ancestor. It can be a book, it can be a letter, it can be a document, it can be a certificate. It could be a picture of a grave marker, a gravestone, tombstone. It could be anything that conveys information. Photographs are everything else that come out from visual images. So if it's a picture of someone, if it's a picture of people gathered for a birthday party or for a holiday or for graduations or things like all of those things are photographs. Everything else that is written and has text and conveys a message in a sense are categorized as documents. Stories are only differentiated from the documents in that they are text versions rather than digitized images. The stories are actually typed in, keyboarded in stories that are made available through the program. And then audio files are obviously differentiated by the fact that they're recorded. They're audio voice recordings of people. Okay, so those are the various issues. Now, something about the items here, we need to mention some very specific things. First of all of the items submitted have to be digitized from a scanner or camera or from a file, already digitized file. So if you're sitting there looking at a piece of paper that is a certificate of some kind, like a death certificate or a birth certificate, and you think, well, it'd be nice if I could put this up online so everybody could see it, then what you have to do is you have to take that and use a scanner, a flatbed scanner or whatever, that will change that, make an image of that, and turn it into a file that can be read by a computer. And or you can use a digital camera like the smartphone cameras or your cell phone camera, a little point and shoot camera, any kind of a camera. Just be careful to make sure you get the whole document and make sure, or whatever, and that there's enough light to read it and you've got it in focus, things like that. But anything that creates a digital file can then be uploaded too. Now, what are the limitations on the digital file? Well, there are certain file types that the memory section will allow and certain that they will not allow. These are the ones that are allowed. Everything else is going to get an error message and not be accepted for upload. JPEG files are the most common image files. If you have a camera up today, unless you've specifically understand the import of, high-end cameras, meaning costing thousands of dollars, that produce camera raw images, then likely what the camera you have produces a JPEG. If you own an iPhone or an Android device of any kind, a tablet, an iPad or whatever, they're going to produce a JPEG image. Almost everything is default JPEG. Now, good news about JPEGs, bad news about JPEGs. JPEG images are what are called lossy, L-O-S-S-Y, lossy images. That means they lose quality if they're edited and if they are transferred through some kinds of different types of programs that are out there. What does that mean for people who are uploading programs to FamilySearch memories? Not much. No one's going to be editing those photographs. The quality that you use when it's uploaded will be the quality of the image. So that's not a problem so much. But there is a second kind of file that's accepted, and that's a TIFF file. That's called tagged image file format, and they are lossless, which means that TIFF images can be edited without losing any of the resolution or quality of the original. Good, bad, better for archiving from a practical standpoint, because there's not going to be anyone editing the photos online that you put up on the memories. It's unlikely that there's much of a difference. BMP, PNG are other types of files that are accepted. The first one's a bitmap file. PNG is a page file. A PNG file is another type of image file. All of these image files are accepted outside of those parameters. Now I can say unequivocally that these 4 image files probably comprise more than 90% of all the images out there on the internet. So it's really not much of a problem. PDF is a different type of file format. It comes from Adobe, the Adobe company, from Photoshop and other Adobe products out there. And a PDF file is a standard way of compressing information and putting it into a package called a PDF file that will be able to be read almost universally. They have become one of the standards for archiving because they are they're something that almost everyone on every computer can read, and most programs recognize. So they're very, very common online on online programs. That it allows you to add more information and not take up quite so much space. It's also very much easier to read a PDF file, which comes up as a series of pages, than it is to read individual pictures of each page in JPEG format, where you have to kind of put the thing together like a puzzle to figure out where you are reading and open each page individually. The last two are audio file formats. The most common is MP3s. Almost every recorder that you buy today will create an MP3. A little bit more advanced file format, more current one is the latest one, that's an MP4, and the type that is used by FamilySearch is an MP4A. Um, there are audio programs that you can download online that will allow you to take an existing audio file and put it into one of these formats, or transform it into a different format. Likewise, there are programs that will take practically any version of an image file and transfer it into one of these supported image formats also. So that's not really, doesn't turn out to be a very, very big problem. Most people can probably upload things without even thinking about it. Now, one of the big limitations here, of course, is file size. An MP4 or PDF, even a TIFF file, can get to be very, very large if we have very high resolution devices. But there is a limitation here of being able to upload one file of up to 15 megabytes. Now, it depends on where you're coming from. If you're used to conserving file space on your computer because you're worried about how much hard drive space you're using, then 15 megabytes may seem like a fairly hefty file size. If you're used to dealing with images, you realize that 15 megabytes is about the average for a JPEG that comes from a point-and-shoot camera. So you're not really, it's really in the ballpark of being practical. Now, what does it mean for PDF files? It means that, generally speaking, if you wanted to upload an entire book, for example, you would probably have to break it down into chapters, or even half of a chapter, because about 10 to 15 or 20 pages PDF is going to be all that's going to fit in a 15 megabyte file. So it's going to have to be put up in pieces. As far as the other programs are concerned, it's just a matter of changing the resolution of the JPEG. If you're one of these people that sets your scanner on the maximum scanning quality, as they say, and slaps your photographs in and scans them at 64-bit full color and at 1200 DPI resolution off of some scanners that you can get today, your file size is going to be about 5 times bigger than you can use on memories. So eventually what you're going to have to do is cut down the resolution and put it up in a little bit less quality of an image in order for it to come under the file size limit. Okay. Now, once you've hit that X, the green X, there's a big space, as I mentioned, where you can drag and drop. When we mean that is that you have to have the item on your computer or on a flash drive or some storage device attached to your computer. And then you have to find it and click on it and actually physically drag the little icon over and drop it onto the screen, that section of the screen. So when you do that, you just have to drop it any place in that area, in the middle of that big block. And once you do that, it will upload automatically and we'll be able to go through the rest of the process. Now, perhaps before you do that process of uploading, you may wish to look at the FamilySearch Content Submission Agreement as to what kinds of things they really will let you upload. Interesting point. It's something that you really need to understand about this, that once you upload a memory to FamilySearch.org, you grant them an unlimited license. Okay, let's talk about that for just a second, about copyright issues. Let's suppose that you write your, Deathless Prose, the great American novel, and you're going to publish it. This is not someplace where you want to put that information, because once you do that, you own what's called the copyright. That means that you were the originator of the work and that you have certain protections under the United States copyright law or the copyright law of the country where you live. Now, if you upload that item or that photograph or that recording or whatever it is to FamilySearch, under the terms of the agreement, of submission agreement, they have an unlimited, complete, absolute, unending right to do whatever they want to with your story or your publication or your photograph or whatever it is you put up online. So you might want to know that before you start sticking things onto FamilySearch. The second thing is that you're responsible for the content. If there's a problem with the content, for example, if you disregard someone else's copyright and upload their copyrighted material and FamilySearch finds out about it, they can simply take it offline without even consulting you. So what you have to do is go through these and at least get some idea of the kinds of things that are allowed and not allowed under the submission agreement. Now, where is the submission agreement? Well, when you cut into the program the first time to put something up online, you will get a box that appears, and it will say, I agree to the FamilySearch Context Submission Agreement, and you have to click I agree. Now, if you don't want to read it, that's your problem. But if you want to read it, there's a link there that'll let you go out and read it, so you can at least know what you're agreeing to. Okay, now, in addition to that, that's the submission content guidelines. There are also what you can upload and what you can't upload. There's a long list here on this particular page, which is also available when you first sign up for the program, and you can dig it out if you just do a search for it on FamilySearch, it'll come up. But the upload guidelines limit the types of photographs. Now, what has been kind of knocked out of my photo? I had a photo that I uploaded that I didn't realize. I put up a number of photos and from my great-grandmother. And I didn't see anything wrong with the photos. And one of the photos was of a hunter who had just shot a rabbit and was holding his gun and holding it up to show the rabbit that he just shot. Well, if you're in my background coming from eastern Arizona, that was about the most usual thing you could ever imagine. I mean, it's like, so what, you know? But it violates the guidelines from FamilySearch, and that photo will not be up on FamilySearch. In addition, no one in a swimming suit can be shown on FamilySearch. Okay, now, and the first thing that comes up is, oh, well, back in the 1920s, swimming suits were like, you know, full suit of clothes, pajamas that they went swimming in. And what about that? The answer is swimming suits are out. So you try to get the swimming suits up, it won't work. So there's some interesting guidelines you may want to know. Of course, they don't want things that are patently offensive, violent, all that kind of stuff. So just be aware of that there are guidelines, and you may get things restricted. There are some surprising things from those who are members of the LDS Church that they might also want to be aware of. We have what are called patriarchal blessings, and they cannot be uploaded, and they will be also restricted. Once you click on the memory section, then you can click on the people, which is the second thing over from the gallery on the menus. And that's what I mentioned earlier, where you get a view of all of the submissions that have been made by all of your relatives. And they have a little icon for each of the relatives, and you can scroll down through those lists. Now, if you haven't got anything there, if no one in your family submitted, then you really have kind of a wide open field. That'll give you a pretty good idea that there's probably no one else out there working on your family line. If you go on and you see that hundreds and hundreds of individuals listed, this, by the way, is only the first 3 or 4 generations of your family. There's not really, it may go back 5 or 6, but it's really not, it doesn't go all the way back. So you're not going to get, candid shots of Adam and Eve and the garden or things like that. That's not coming out. So this is really deals with your ancestors and is an eye-opener for most people. And the solution here is that these photos are contributed by anyone that's related to you, period, anybody. And so you may not even know who these people are, you may not recognize them. Interesting thing is that if you didn't submit it, now if you did submit it, they're going to assume you know who you were submitting. If you didn't, they're going to put a little link at the bottom that says, how am I related to this person? So that you can click on that and it'll show you who these people really are. Okay. Then when you click on the icon itself, it's taken to what's called the memories section for the individual. If you go to and look at an individual in the family tree, you usually see what are called their detail information. That would be their birth, death, family members, all that kind of stuff, sources. But if the next thing over will show their memories. So everything that's been uploaded for that specific individual will show up. This brings up kind of another issue too. In this particular one here, you'll see that with my ancestor David Thomas, my great-great-great-grandfather, David Thomas, there's 3 pictures there. They're all the same picture. And just sort of comment on that fact. Before you start uploading the stuff to FamilySearch, take about a couple of minutes and look to see what's already there. It may not be necessary to upload the same photo 5 times or 3 or 4 or 5 times. So, and it might be important to upload the most original of the photos rather than, in this case, there are 3 photos, one that shows the original and 2 that shows cropped portions of the original. In other words, enlarged portions of the image. And like I said, you can click on that to see the relationships, how you're related to these people going back to who they are. Now, all of the photos that are uploaded to the memory section need to be tagged and titled. The tagging is the little icon of a face with a plus sign. The title is where it says add title. That's a dead giveaway. The tagging lets people know who is in the picture. The title should be informative and let people know what the picture is about. And if there are individuals in the picture, they should at least be mentioned, if not individually, collectively. There is a limit to the length of any title, and so you're going to run into length issues, and you need to be a little bit, think about the titles you're going to use so that you can fit in as much information in the title as possible. So the tag is added by this little icon, and the titles are added by clicking on the plus sign next to the add a title section. When you do that, you get an enlarged view of the photo, and then you get a lot of little icons that let you know different things about what you can do with that photo. At the top, you can and first of you can add tags. Now a tag tells someone tells everyone who looks at this photo, by the way, everyone can see it. It doesn't matter who, if these are dead people, then there are no limitations on who can see this photo. And I might mention at this point that there is also no limitation on the search engine's capability of finding this photo. So once you tag this photo with someone's name, then that can be found on a Google search. So you can search for the name of the person and photo, and it'll come up. Or if you go to the images section of Google, all of the photos that are tagged to this individual will also show up. Okay. Well, then there's a question here. This is, I mentioned that I'd talk about this a moment ago. What if there's a person that's alive in the picture and a person that's dead in the picture? Well, that's interesting. If you tag the dead person, then that photo then becomes visible regardless of if the other person in the photo is alive. So there's no way it's blocked simply because one person is alive and one person is deceased. So you might keep that in mind when you're showing group shots if you really are worried about showing pictures of people. Now, anybody who's acquainted with Instagram or Facebook, which is practically the entire world now, will probably recognize the fact that nearly everybody human on the planet has now had their picture taken for Facebook or Instagram. And those are all public and those are all searchable and they're all out there. And the question is, why are you so worried about putting up pictures of people when they're not, and they're taking selfies and pictures of themselves and posting it every day on Facebook and Instagram? Okay, so there's just some things to kind of think about when you're worried about who and what you're putting up online. Although there are some obvious things that you would not want to put online if there's things that are inappropriate or disturbing. Okay, now you add a title by clicking where it says add title, and then you can type in, keyboard in the whatever information you wish to use to title that. My suggestion is that you at least put the names of the people who appear in the photo. If that's not possible to fit all that in, you may want to identify by them by family or by some other identifying. It's also helpful if you know where the photo was taken to put it in the title, because that makes it searchable. There are some other ways to add that information. You can add a description of the photo that can be much longer than the title in the block that's at the top of the right-hand side. You can also add additional information like the date and place that the photo was taken. This is tagging. This would be a photo that is both tagged and titled. At the top you see where it says Overson family from St. John's, Apache, Arizona. And then one of the individuals shows up as tagged. The difficulty you have in capturing this on a screen view is that as I move my mouse over the faces, then those tags appear. And as if I go down their name as listed, the tags will appear. There isn't any particular way to get all the tags to appear all at one time so I can do a screenshot, so you get only one tag at a time. These tags show as circles around the person, and they show up when you hover over the name or photo with your mouse. The name, of course, you type in and then associate with someone in the family tree, connect that to the family tree. And if you don't know who it is, then of course you leave it blank. But if you want to, and you keep adding all of the ones in that you know who they are, just basically leave the rest clear. Now, it's very possible that one of your relatives will come along and say, oh, well, I know who that person is, or that isn't the right person. And they might contact you and they might not. They might just put in the tag to show who the extra person is, which is very helpful and helps get to the thing. Now, one of the things you can do is that you can click in to see the detail. Up in the upper left-hand corner of the photo, there's a thing that says zoom. And if you click on that little link, then you can actually zoom in to see the photo in more detail. So here's zooming in to see my great-great-grandmother and her daughters, one of whom behind her, the standing, is my great-grandmother. Okay, here's some simple rules for submitting. Number one, look for duplicates before you load the photos. Make sure that someone else hasn't put the same photo in. Now, what if your photo is much better quality than the one that's already there? Well, the answer is upload yours. What if yours shows the whole picture and not just the head or something? The answer is upload yours. There's really no problem with having duplicate photos. It's more a problem for people who are compulsively tidy and don't like things that are extra or messed up. It isn't really an issue with the computers. The difference in the small amount of space taken up is negligible. Secondly, tag and title all the photos. Make sure they're all tagged and titled. First of all, if they're not tagged, you can't see, nobody can see them. So until you tag a photo, it is not visible. Now, what if it's a photo of a farmhouse, or if it's a photo of some other significant thing with the family? You still have to tag it to the people who are important. So you click someplace on the photo, um, and then that will show up as a tagged photo. So, uh, but until you tag it, it isn't visible to anyone. And titling does not make the photo visible, but it makes it understandable and searchable. So it's important to start putting in your titles to all your photos also. Like I mentioned, talk about the identity of the people in the photo and also the place where the photo was taken. If you have unknown people, I get this question all the time. Well, I have a bunch of photos, but I don't know who all these people are, and they were relatives, but I don't know who they are. My parents might have, they're dead. So, how do I figure this out? My answer is now you have a pool of people out there who are related to you who can come to the program and identify all these people. So what we do, what I do, for example, is I have a collection of the photos from my great-grandmother. I just identify them as unknown people from my grandmother's collection. And every once in a while, someone will come along and tag someone in the photo or tell me I've got the wrong name or something. And collectively, they start to get identified. So it's just the fact that you don't know who the people are. Now, how do you tag a photo if you don't know who the people are? Then you're going to have to tag it to the person who took the photo or where you got the photo. So you need to tag it to someone. Um, you can say relatives of my grandfather, unidentified relatives of my grandfather, and then tag it to your grandfather. That way, if anybody knows your grandfather and goes in and knows any of those people, then they can identify them. Be sure to follow the guidelines for uploading photos. Um, it's frustrating to spend time uploading a photo and then have it come back and say rejected. Um, and then they send you an email telling you why it was rejected. So anyway, it's kind of a little extra that you don't need to go through. Now, I mentioned the difference between a document and a photo. A document contains information usually written or printed. That doesn't mean that if you take a picture of your parents or your grandparents on vacation and they're standing next to the welcome to Yellowstone National Park sign that becomes a document. It's still a photo, but if it's a grave marker, a tombstone or something, and there's no people in the photo, then that's a document. Anything that just conveys information is a document. A photo has people and places. A document or photo can be, both a document and a photo can also be added as a source. There's a process you go to put up a photo and then add it as a source. So the question here is this a document or a photo? And the answer is that I've already said a couple of times, this really is a document. It is not a photo in the sense of being a photograph of something. It is actually telling you information about that grave marker. So it actually becomes a document because it contains information. Okay, stories. Stories are basically text files. Now, a text file is an unformatted word processing file. If you have a program like Microsoft Word, or if you use some other word processing program like Apple's Pages or something, you have an option to save any file you create as a text file, and that's what's going to get uploaded to Stories. One of the things about text files is they don't have a whole lot of formatting. So you have to remember that when you're creating a text file, that you may want to double space between paragraphs or do something to give a little bit of formatting to the story, because your fancy text, your fancy fonts and things like that are going to vanish when you upload it to FamilySearch. I suggest that you copy and paste the story, type it out on or keyboard it out onto a word processing document, and then copy and paste it in. Instead of composing it online, there's always the chance that you get through writing this 3 or 4 page document and all of a sudden the computer jumps or burps and you end up losing everything you've typed. So I would suggest that you would want to just paste it all in and get it done real quickly and work either offline or with another word processing program. Make sure you tag all the individuals mentioned in the story. You could think this one might get very long and involved. It can if you're writing a very involved history and it mentions dozens of people. You may end up tagging more people than you can believe. Okay, now we're down to audio files. They are MP3s or MP4As, up to 15 megabytes. And that gives you about 10 to 15 minutes or more depending on the file size. So it's depending on the quality of the recording that you make. The higher the quality recording, the shorter the time frame because we're at the 15 megabyte limit. And 15 megabytes is not big enough for an hour-long dissertation of anything, even at a lower quality. As I mentioned earlier, you need to be aware of copyright. When in the United States today, any work, which includes anything that can be affixed in a readable format or usable format, is from photographs to movies to books to written documents, anything, cards, anything that you want to create, automatically are copyrighted in the United States today. There is no need for a copyright notice. There's no prerequisite to obtaining a copyright. It just, everything is automatically copyrighted. So do not assume that the document that you're trying to incorporate and put up online is not incorporated. Assume that it may be a copyrighted and then make a diligent search to make sure that there's no claim of copyright before you put it online. That's very simple to do, by the way. If you're the one who owns the copyright, meaning you're the originator of the work, you took the photograph, you wrote the story, or you did something else, because then you have the right to put it online without worrying about anybody being afraid of it. So copyright infringement's something that will end up getting your stuff taken offline if it's detected. Remember this, everything on memories is searchable on Google except the photos of living people. If you tag a dead people in a living people photo, then it's searchable. So once you've tagged somebody who's dead, it's searchable. And so that's the rule. And if you tag a living person, if you tag a dead person in a photo with a bunch of living people, then the whole image all of a sudden becomes searchable. Okay. Well, thanks for watching. I think that I've looked at this photo a number of times, and I think that the person on the left is my grandmother. So she was quite a character, I think. Most of the pictures I have of her, by the way, she's riding a horse. So a lot of them. So of course, they had to get around, and there wasn't much you could do if you didn't want to walk in those times. Okay. We are here from the BYU Family History Library. These webinars will be put online on the BYU Family History Library YouTube channel. We are also offer classes in the library, and through the connections, we have a lot of documents. The same webinars are also linked from the BYU Family History Library website, which is on byu.edu, part of the Brigham Young University website. Thanks for watching.